Good afternoon, and welcome to a wet Spanish afternoon, something we haven't really experienced much since we've been in Spain, and even managed to have some snow this week. This is sort of just a broadcast where people can join in and have a conversation with us if they want to. You can basically ask any questions you like. Rona's online. Hi, Rona. Rona will be with us tomorrow as well. I'm going to have a live chat with Rona tomorrow about general life and things. So looking forward to that. But today it's basically open to people to ask questions, or maybe people want to get involved. So when I say get involved, I mean you can actually come on the live chat if you'd like. So I've got a few topics down, which I'll just cover. Obviously, this is a bit of an unscheduled one. I wasn't sure how quickly this would work. So the first thing I want to say is YouTube Hangouts with the Google Plus Hangouts going through YouTube. If you don't set up the quick, which is the one that takes you through to Hangout straight away, and you start a live event, and you can't get it to remove it, just set it into the future. Because I've had this problem. I've been sat here for about 30 minutes trying to delete this podcast, which is basically the one before the one we're on now, because it wouldn't let me do a quick live, which basically means it would put it through to Google Plus, and then we broadcast like this. It was asking for another codec, and I couldn't do it because there isn't one set up, but then it was caught in a loop because I don't want to install this other software when Google Plus works just fine. But then it's not letting me delete it, and every time I went into the live, it was then sending me back to the one that doesn't work. So I couldn't delete it, and I couldn't start a new one. So in the end, I just sent it off and scheduled it for next month, because YouTube will delete it itself in time. I might put it back to a today later on, so it'll delete itself later when nothing actually happens. So that's one of the issues. But hey ho, can't have everything. Apollo Raiders has joined us as well. Hello, Apollo Raiders. So the conversation is going to be quite broad, because I know a few people have asked for stuff on Spain. Some people have asked for stuff on the Philippines. The big one for the UK at the moment and Spain is the Brexit. And I'll be honest with you, at the moment, Theresa May is putting forward what she wants, and currently the EU isn't engaging with anything. A lot of it is just mudslinging, and nothing's really happened yet. I would say we have to wait and see what Trump puts on the table, because that's probably the only route that the UK could use as a bit of leverage. Although the UK has debt with the EU, it could actually have more trade with the US and rely on the EU less. So there is something there. But the old peacock feathers, I don't think does anybody any benefit. One of the things a lot of people I've seen on these forums, and I find they get very, very toxic very quickly, where you've got the people that are pro leaving the EU, and then you've got the people that want to remain in the EU. My personal viewpoint is I can understand frustrations from both sides, because there's a lot of problems within the EU itself. There's a lot of problems within the UK itself, which a lot of the media don't really cover. I don't think migration and immigration are going to help the UK sort its problems out, but it becomes a focal point because it's a very easy one to manipulate. I think the UK's got much bigger problems, and I think they should be focusing on those before assuming this will fix it. I mean, you've got to look at the NHS, for example. Its reliance on migrants for doctors, nurses, dentists, etc., is well known. I mean, the amount of Filipino nurses in the UK, I don't think anybody actually knows how many are there. Polish dentists. Remember when they all arrived in the UK? Because the NHS waiting list for dentists was horrendous. And then you've got doctors. I know doctors that are flown in on a weekly basis to the UK from India because there's a lack of doctors. So there's all those things that don't really get talked about, which is the fact we're short of a lot of skills in the UK. We're short of people that actually are needed in the NHS alone in those skills. But the media will focus on the negative people that are negative from their own communities, wherever they come from. They don't focus on the positive aspects of immigrants that go into Europe or into the UK. Because here in Spain, you've got to remember the majority of the population here, I would assume, are retirees. If they're retired here in Spain, it means they're not a burden of the NHS, they're a burden of the Spanish authorities. And quite rightly so. They've paid for their pensions out of their working lives. So they are entitled to healthcare. But if they're forced back to the UK, how much of a strain is that going to put on the NHS? These things need to be calculated and put in there. It's all right. People say, well, you left the UK, you're not British anymore, and this sort of stuff. But I know myself, working overseas, the amount of people that work in the Middle East, for example, that send millions, if not billions of pounds worth of contracts into Europe from the Middle East and other countries, you know, you've got India, Asia, whatever, they're expats. And those overseas contracts generate jobs within the UK and Europe. So you've got to understand, you know, I know a lot of people understand this already. Expats do a lot for the world. You know, they do a lot for their home countries, even when they're overseas. These things need to be put in context. So I think that's the thing. And I don't think there's going to be this sudden change in the way the UK engages with the EU. I think it relies too much on the EU at the moment. Even if it wants a breakaway, it will take time. And my personal view, even though May's talking about March, that's Theresa May, the current Prime Minister of the UK, I think even doing that, you're looking at a 2-year window of things being discussed, never mind changing, just being discussed. So it ain't going to happen overnight. One thing I would say, though, is don't let things boil over. There's more worrying things that affect the next 2 years that are happening today. So don't worry about it. I want to talk about something I do, which is recalculating. This is a completely different subject. What I do is I create a flow chart and I create goals. You know, different people do it different ways. And sometimes I have to recalculate. And recalculating is one of those things today. There's been a few calculations thrown in the mix, which sort of changes things short term, but long term, they'll get back to where they were. First thing is dentist bills. I've got my son going in for some dentist work here in Spain. It's going to be private dental care, but the problem is he's got a couple of problems with his teeth. And if you're sitting down, that's going to set me back about €900. So it's quite a big repair job. Why didn't you get covered in medical insurance? You'll find a lot of the medical insurance won't cover this. You need a fully comprehensive one for dentist care. And in all honesty, for the amount of work that you'd actually need in dentist care on a regular basis, it wouldn't actually make any financial sense. Also, once the residency cards and everything are done, the kids are entitled to free medical care anyway. It's just the fact that he needs some urgent work done, so we'll get it done. General healthcare stuff, already covered. But the dentist work is one of those things you've got to be careful of in Spain if you're not yet a resident or don't have full medical cover. So what else have we got? Oh, yeah, back to recalculating. I've also had a bit of a family emergency in the Philippines this week as well. My father-in-law's brother died, so I'm having to help out a little bit there relating to helping my father-in-law. So these things happen, and this is the thing: is not to get stressed with, not to get wound up with, not to get annoyed. It's just part of life, and all you do, and this is what I do, is I'll go for a walk, have a think, and recalculate. First thing is, we've got the money already, but it means that some of the stuff we were doing will now go into next month because we're now financially, we'll put it off for a month. It's a bit like buying the apartment here in Spain. I'm just waiting for my contract to be signed off for this year, which is already in discussions. That is holding up buying a property at the minute. Not because we can't buy it, it's because the money I've got in the bank is my safety net, and I don't really want to spend it. So like that, recalculating is waiting another month. And that's one of the things I want to say to people, is if you've got things that become a crisis in life, don't let them. It's just part of life. You can adjust to it, adapt to it, and just put it off for another month. Adapt to what you need to do now, and then what you want, you can do next month. Don't let things drag you down. And that gets me onto family issues, because family issues being, my family's a lot broader than the average person. I've got a daughter in the UK. I've got my family here, my wife and kids here in Spain as well. And then I've got my in-laws out in the Philippines. Family issues for me aren't too bad. We do have the odd crisis here and there, but at the end of the day, they're not something we can't deal with. We budget for it. We prepare for it. Right now, we have a fund growing in the Philippines. It was quite funny. Well, I was talking to April yesterday that every time we try to develop something new in the Philippines, something then happens, because we'll spend the budget on something. An example of this was we bought a new bed last week because we're renovating one of the apartments, but I try to do it in baby steps. So it'll be like buy the bed, then next will be the mattress, then a new kitchen unit, etc., etc. Because every time we do something, we get a little family emergency come along. And then one thing I want to point out is these aren't like people abusing things. They're just that things that really do happen. There's no getting away from it. It's just part of life, and it's just the way it goes. I mean, it's like my daughter in the UK. She's getting to the age where she's already started her first job, but still studying and may end up going to university afterwards. So starting to develop a fund for that as well is also starting to be another thing on the list of starting to get it organized. But that's what I'm saying. You get family stuff going on. Everybody gets it. It's all how you deal with it. It's how things are dealt with, which is an important bit. A lot of people get stressed or bogged down and think, just deal with it. You know, the thing is, you can't change these things. There's no point getting annoyed about it. What you need to do is say, right, that's happened. We can work with it. And that's it. And that's how I work with these things. That's why I don't get too bogged down with people with things going on. You know, it's quite simply, there's worse things, as the saying goes, worse things happen at sea. And I think that's probably the most relevant thing, is there's always something worse out there. Oh, Ala Winter's with us, and Tim. I'll just say a big hello. Well, you can hear me as I probably typing it. Hello to Ala Winter and hello to Tim. So yeah, family issues, not to get worried about. Dental care, we've covered. That's another topic I was just going over. One thing I will say though, in the Philippines, get your teeth fixed. It's cheap enough. I got my front teeth capped, and some other work done. Cost me 20,000 pesos. Well worth it, and it was, you know, good job and something worth investing in. Yeah, hello Winter, as you said, I'm the coolest guy in the Philippines YouTube community. And the next topic is, for me, family is everything. And as you probably guessed, with the way I structure everything to make sure everybody's okay, It really is pretty much everything for me. I put them before business. I put them before anything. Over the years, I was the other way around. I put business first, and I developed my career above everything else. And one of the things I will say with that is putting your business first is there's a lot of sacrifice, especially in the corporate world. You spend most of your time away from home. You spend most of your time in hotels. You spend most of your time pretty much isolated, except for other people in the same business, because everything revolves around business, especially if it's on a steep learning curve. For example, if you're moving from managing a construction site or something, and then moving into developing forward planning projects and other things that aren't in your remit normally, you're then trying to tap into the other people in that same skill set, and other people are tapping into yours because you're constantly developing your skills, which means your spare time doesn't exist, because when you're working, and in your spare time, you're learning. I've moved away from that now. I spend a lot more time with family. I spend a lot more time talking to my family, which is even to extended family. One of my uncles calls me that's actually divorced to my blood relative auntie. We talk on the phone for hours. I sort of stepped back a bit. I think I sort of mellowed out over the years. So I say, yeah, family is important, really important. Which gets me onto this other topic: does business offer freedom, or does it offer a life sentence? And that's, for me, it's a blend of the two, and sometimes it can be a blessing. The call center in the Philippines worked really, really well. We made some good money. We bought the other lot next to ours. We renovated it. We built our offices. We bought all the computer gear. We renovated the apartments to then rent out. But the offset of that was I was working 7 hours a day, 7 days a week, for night and day. I actually had servers running at the end of my bed, because the problem I had is I found a lot of the technical guys know their bits in the Philippines. They know some of the information relating to the service. But as I found with another call center, this is why I don't really talk about the call centers with their names, because of the way some of these contracts work. They've got non-disclosure agreements. But I can talk about one that actually no longer exists now, which was Avid Roof. Avid Roof, their server went down and they were offline for, I think, 3 days. Myself, I keep extra servers available. I can build a server from scratch in an hour. But where you have issues is when these servers are dialing calls. They're dialing each person. You can adjust this depending on the hour of the day, but you can dial a lot of, like say we're running 30 people. I might be dialing 90, between 40 and 90 calls at a time. Now, if you're sitting monitoring the system, you can see the data lines on the command line. It's not graphical, it's basically lines of data as the calls are being made. You can see if there's any congestion when the internet starts to get slow. Well, a lot of call centers don't do that. And the problem you get if you let congestion run, the calls don't connect, but you're getting billed for every single call. So if you're running 100 calls and you only have 5 connect, the reality is that you're not actually making money, you're spending money. And it's why my running costs were a lot cheaper than others, is I monitored the servers. But during the day, I was also fixing all the PCs as well. Alan Winter's got a question. Matt, did you set yourself a goal when it comes to generating income in the Philippines? A certain amount you would have to generate from your businesses in the Philippines. I would have to say at the beginning, I renovated an apartment with my wife, because originally we were working with the extended family. We were going to help develop the family as a unit. not me as a couple or me as just my family, but as the extended family, because I was looking to develop everything for everybody. But they got greedy early on, which is why there's still an ongoing dispute, because the family divided over this dispute. But initially, I needed to understand how much it really cost to live in the Philippines. And back then, 2007, our bare minimum was actually 5,000 pesos a month. Sounds very low, but that's exactly how much we could live on. It doesn't mean that's what we wanted to live on, but that's what our minimum was. The same was I bought a scooter and kept all the costs to a minimum, because I had about £6,000 in the bank, and I was trying to avoid having to go back to the UK. So initially we lived on 5, but my budget, ideally I wanted about 20,000 back then, 20,000 pesos a month. So what I did is I started doing website stuff. I started engaging with other types of businesses, trying to understand how people were making money locally. Now, one of the things I will say that I have an advantage over a lot of people is my contracting work is always in demand. So the first few months we spent together in the Philippines, then I hopped back to the UK, work for 3 months, then I come back again. Now, back then, my income was up to £2,500 a week, which is quite a good income. And because it's only 3 months, I also get a tax rebate before the April, which is the end of the tax year. So it didn't actually pay for me to spend a lot of time in the UK, because your tax rate goes up. I mean, I think at the UK at the moment, first £30,000 is 20%. Over 30%, over the 20%. Once you go over the £30,000, it starts getting into the 40% tax on the money you've earned over the 30,000. So there's a lot of reasons I don't work a full year. Financially, it just doesn't make sense sometimes. But I did spend a lot of time looking at different ideas, and like I said, initially it was 20,000. But once we started having the children, that increased. Our medical bills initially were between 1,000 and 5,000 pesos a month, because we had private healthcare. So the kids were having vaccines and stuff. We were paying all that in cash. So you got to understand that those things develop. The reality is that you turn around and you develop your income to suit what your needs are. And now it's more, because just on the children's education in the Philippines, you're talking 20,000 on that when they're there. In Spain, it's not too bad, because we pay into the social system. We're paying tax, we're paying social security. Now, the first thing I want to say on that is, even in the UK, I'm still paying that even though I'm not using it. So in Spain, we're actually getting some of our money back because the kids are at school and we're not paying it twice. So yeah, I think that's the problem you have in the Philippines, is the cost of children is something people don't really discuss, because it inflates quite rapidly, because you have the cost of people's the kids' education. You might need medical cover while you're sorting all your paperwork out, and generally the living costs of kids, because like things like going to school in the Philippines, you're paying for transportation every day. There's a lot of extra costs that I don't really have. So yeah. So yeah, Tim's asking how the rental business is going in the Philippines, which is another one. What I found in the Philippines, it's very easy to start a rental business, because there's always people looking for property. Now, when I first went out there, we started off with, we rented our own apartment after we moved from the family compound. and April's family have got another compound nearby. So we started developing apartments. So I'll do a hop into the UK, make some money, then we'd start developing a business. Now the first one was we opened the internet cafe. It made some money, but it wasn't making great money. But also then I started to see the peso machines weren't a headache. So what I did is I basically took the peso machines and left them outside the house, converted the first unit into an apartment, and then put another apartment on top of that one. There's enough money out of 2 apartments to basically cover our cost of living in the Philippines. Now, we've actually bought the compound next to it with the call center money. So that's actually give us another 3 apartments on the side. So yeah, the answer to that is you can get away with about 20,000 pesos, you know, cost of living wise. But yeah, the rental business is still expanding. We've got Mark's in 1 unit at the moment, and then we've got a Filipina living in the other one whose partner's overseas at the moment. What other questions have we got? Here's an interesting one. What do I put up with the negative people on YouTube and the other bits and pieces around the web? The reality is they're simply not important. They're like children, very sick children in some cases. But the reality in life is they're not important. What I found over the years is these people will do it anyway. You know when people were kids and they like to bully other ones, but at the same time, I think these people, they hide on the internet for the sake of not having to engage with people they'll ever bump into. But also, it's when you sort of say, okay, well, I'll have a look at what these people are doing, you start getting to the realities of these people. Jay sent me a link relating to what Jeff was saying about his sort of rebuttal about what somebody else was saying about Jeff. And it's like, oh, you know, this isn't true. This isn't true. The reality is the stuff that is out there about Jeff was written by Jeff. Yeah, because the thing what you get with Jeff Lee Brown said he was only in Scientology for 2 years. He wasn't. He's in 20 years, and he was. I mean, his latest video said he only did it for a business program. Also lies, because if you look at the stuff he's actually posted himself about his 20-odd years in Scientology, he actually explains some of the stuff he was doing. So he was doing this Sweatbox thing, where he was charging $1,500 and put 70 people through it. Well, that's $110,000 US that he was getting commission off. All the stuff that's been put together about Jeff was written by Jeff. It's as simple as that. But the thing with the stuff about myself is people have made it up. I mean, Tim's just brought it up. Am I still getting pestered by that other troll? In all honesty, I don't really go looking for him. Because the other troll is a similar setup to Jeff. It's figments of their imagination. It's not. I'm not about what they say about me. I mean, what they do say about me is actually manipulated, etc. But they also don't want to cover themselves. For example, what does Jeff do for a living? He sells a magazine, according to himself, but then his LinkedIn profile says otherwise. In the same way, he said that he'd never edited it. He didn't know how to get into it. He didn't know how to use the password. Yet in his own video, he's logged in. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, Tim's saying that other guy really doesn't like me. No, he doesn't like 20 other people either. The reason he doesn't like me the most, I'm not about Jeff, is somebody else, is I exposed the guy for what he was doing, because these guys seem to have a vendetta. But they like to be, like, I would say, online superheroes, but they're not actually doing anything constructive. What do I mean? Well, it's like to say, well, they're exposing something, they're doing something. They haven't actually exposed anything of value. What I mean, the Philippines has its criminals in the expat community. It has some very, very bad people. In the same way as Thailand, the UK, whatever, they have them. Do they chase any of those? The answer is no. They wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. They're too scared to. What they do is just, like I was saying, it's like playground bullying at a distance, because I'm sure on a one-to-one basis, these people wouldn't say it to anybody's face. I don't think they have that strength in them. I'll leave it at that. I don't think they're strong enough characters to do it. Myself, some of these people, they're not on YouTube too much, but even in the expat community, I tell people to the face. I don't mind, because I just say it as it is. And some people accept it, some people don't. Whatever, you know. I'm not asking for them to send me a birthday card and a Christmas card every year. I'm just honest with it. Hello, Winter. Do you think Jeff has a crush on you? I don't know what Jeff's issue is. I think he doesn't like the fact that I went through all his stuff and just put his own stuff online. Now, bearing in mind, Jeff's stuff's already online. It's just I put it all in one place with all the links going back to the different websites that he's on. Because he's not a new person to this stuff. He was doing it with a Scientology group. He's been banned on YouTube long before the Philippine stuff. On the Scientology forums, they're like outspoken forums. They actually discuss Jeff. I mean, I find this bizarre that there's actually threads just on Jeff on these Scientology forums. But he was harassing people long before we ever come across him. But yeah, I don't really want to attack the guy too much though, because I don't spend enough time on these people. I really don't. They don't bother me too much. That's the thing. I was talking to my friend Nimesh. Nimesh is out in India, you may have guessed. But he was reading up on this French guy, and he was saying that he thinks the guy actually believes the stuff he writes. I said, yeah, but you know it's not true. And it's like, I know, but he thinks, the guy thinks it's real. Because that's the one thing a lot of these people don't understand. It's like Tim Rogers in the chat at the moment. Tim stayed in my place. Tim actually knows me. And there's a lot of people on Facebook that know me. A lot of this stuff on YouTube is only a very small snippet of what I'm doing. So a lot of stuff that these guys write is in their heads because they've never met me. This is a bizarre thing, and because this is what we were discussing with Nimesh yesterday. He said, whatever affects people that engage with you, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Because the thing is, people that actually know me. And it's as simple as that. They know me as a person. I have no interest in doing anything illegal, etc. I work on very important government contracts. They're important to me. I cannot have any involvement in anything that could jeopardize that. So I don't. It's as simple as that. But a lot of the times I've had issues with people over the years personally. It's from a moral point of view. I don't agree with the way some people are, but it doesn't mean I sit there like some of these guys would do. And I mean, the French guy was on holiday with this guy in Bohol for 2 weeks. And then when he went back to France, he wrote about him on his blog and used the photos from the 2 weeks. I wouldn't have spent an hour with the guy. But hey ho, that's enough about the trolls today. Unless anybody's got anything they want to add, but I'm just glad they're only a small group of trolls, because they don't do the Philippines any favors. Oh, Christopher Lane's joined us. Hi, Chris. How's Cebu? Obviously, I'm not going to get a response back. He's in the live chat, not in the actual live video. This is an important one. I think people need to understand. Well, sorry, I say that as if I'm a teacher. No, this is like something I think people should discuss, which is, if you're not happy, change it. I've got the kids playing with an alarm clock in the other room now. If you're not happy in life, change it. It doesn't matter if it's the Philippines, doesn't matter if it's UK, doesn't matter if it's your job, doesn't matter. You can change things. The big problems. Oh, Dan's joined us as well. Or is that Don? My eyesight's gone terrible. Don, yeah. That's one thing that's really messed my life up, I'll be honest, is when my eyesight deteriorated. I was at work one day and just went bang. And it's like, suddenly I needed glasses. And from somebody who's had 20/20 vision for years, it suddenly just hit me one day. And it was just like, the world has ended. So I'm glad I got some good glasses now. But yeah, if you're not happy with something, change it. And I think this is where some of the trolling stuff comes from. A lot of these guys don't seem happy. Whether they've had a failure in the Philippines or somewhere else, something has bit them that puts this slight sourness in them. And I don't know what it is. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently about the way Jeff reflects on his blog, but he'll put quotes about well-being and stuff, but it's not him. You know, I don't understand. You know, you're either happy or not. You live by these things. You don't just post it. You've got to be doing it. Oh, Hello Winter's asking Chris a question. Okay. Yeah, so it's on about video freedom. I'm not sure about video freedom stuff. I've seen his first video, but I haven't really followed him since then. Tim's asking an important question. Now the Filipino president has had time to get settled, how do you think he's doing? In all honesty, I think it's still early. I do think that there needs to be a lot of reviews, but they're tackling infrastructure stuff now. The original issues, they've got the original issues with the drug problems, etc., that they're dealing with. I don't think that will ever end, because let's face it, even in countries that have some of the worst, well, let's just say they've got the death sentences, they still have the drug problem. It's not something that's easily fixed. And I do think you need to drag a country out of poverty as well with it to actually reduce people's desire to get involved with it. Now, I have to say I'm very anti-drugs myself. I come from a military family. Drugs has never been something that's been seen as a positive light in any form, even from a young child. But the thing is, I think Duterte's now moving into infrastructure, and they're on about redevelopments, this rail work, and etc. I think he's actually putting a legacy together, because all this stuff will not be finished in his time as president. But I think it will be something that, if it's followed on with the next president, which I think is the important bit, who is going to follow Duterte, I think things could improve a lot in the Philippines. I really don't want it going backwards. I want it to be progressing. The high-speed rail links, developing good infrastructure, free healthcare, this sort of stuff. And I know some people are anti-free healthcare. I think for me, having people I've known died because they couldn't afford healthcare, because I've been made aware of it afterwards. I would actually help them if I was aware of it at the time. An 8-year-old child dying from dysentery is stuff that shouldn't really be happening in my mindset. Norwegian polar bear is asking a good question. Will Duterte allow foreign internet companies come to the Philippines? I think what he's doing at the moment, he's actually targeting the companies that already exist to kick them up the backside. If they can keep it insular, I think they will. I would say that if they don't pull their finger out, he will turn around and start allowing other companies in that will invest in the infrastructure. But I've spoken to people about this sort of thing before in private, and there's certain problems in the Philippines due to the way cable's been laid in the past, etc. That the cost of putting in infrastructure is also expensive. For example, if you don't know where the power cables and things are that are buried, and other people's cables for the TV and everything else, they have to dig deeper. So there's inflated costs there in bringing in new infrastructure. So I would say if they don't sort themselves out, I think Duterte will do it. I can see it coming. I can see him start to bring in. I don't know if it's going to come from the West, though. That's the interesting thing, because his alliances seem more in line with Russia and China. So I don't know. From that sense, I haven't really studied the Chinese network, but I lived out in Hong Kong, and technology-wise, they're way ahead of where we were in the UK. There was about 5 years difference in technology when I was there in the 80s. So I could say we'll wait and see. Aloe Vera sorry about that. Aloe Winter asked a good question. What do you think about the current state of the Philippine YouTube community? I think it's going in the wrong way with some, not all. And I think that's the problem, because people focus on negative stuff more than positive stuff. One thing I don't like is the online begging. And I call it online begging when people say, oh, I've got no money, it's begging. Charity projects, I'm open-minded with, because the problem I have is I don't know what people are doing with the money, so I can't really comment on it. But my personal viewpoint is I spend money on charity things myself. I don't really put it on YouTube. I spend my own money. I don't ask people for money. I don't get involved in that. Typhoon Haiyan, I started doing stuff myself and other people want to get involved, which is why I got into this thing with PayPal, because people wanted to send me money, and I was sort of like, but I spent a lot of money myself. But I don't like the begging stuff and the arguing between different people. I do sit there scratching my head sometimes, wondering why people do it. You know, because at the end of the day, the biggest culprits for doing it, I find, don't actually live in the Philippines. So sitting there being very critical on other people that are putting out their information, I do find very odd. Because they're tourists in many senses of the word. They may go there once a year, they may go there a few times a year, but they're not actually living in the Philippines. And I do know some of the people that do some of this stuff have had some bad experiences in the Philippines. But I do think, you know, myself, I've had bad experiences in my life. I just brush myself off and just like, that was a bad day, move on. Yeah, well, Aloe Winter says, I love the drama, I need the drama, I love to watch people suffer. I don't know. Yeah, but that's how it is. Yeah, but the thing with YouTube is you don't have to watch anything. You know, you can select who you watch, which is one of the things, you know, I do recommend. If you're actually biting with it, somebody gets under your skin, nothing says you have to sit there and listen to it or watch it. You can just go to somewhere else. Yeah, Norwegian Polar Bear has got some good points. The Philippine YouTube community is bigger and better than ever. The problem is one or two mental disturbed individuals that you cause a lot of drama. I agree on that. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's grown significantly in the last couple of years from where it was. It's growing. But the drama stuff, as Chris Lane points out, there's much drama there. Yes, but the bizarre thing is, a lot of the drama isn't real drama. You know, as some of the guys that live in the Philippines know, there's stuff going on around you all day long, like real stuff. You know, the neighbors that shoot each other over land disputes and other things like that. I find that stuff more interesting. I remember I grabbed one of the newspapers as I was flying back to London, and it was about was now the former mayor of Talisay, his adopted son, relating to a tire vulcanizer. If you don't know what a vulcanizer is, it's a tire changer. They don't often have tires, which is why they're just a changer, because you pay like 30 pesos for somebody to change a tire. Now, he's fought before he'd gone there, and these tires are like 5,000 pesos each, according to the newspaper article. And he'd come back the following day because there was some reason they couldn't get it fitted, and there'd been a break-in, the tires were stolen. And he basically kidnapped the vulcanizer because he couldn't pay for the cost of the tires. He beat the guy, and he kidnapped him, took him away, beat him. The police recovered the guy, and now that's drama, and that's stuff that's really in the Philippines. Hello, Winter. When I talk about drama, I want to see people yell into the camera, cry, break down in front of the camera. I need that. It's an interesting one. I don't know if anybody's ever down to that level, though. I don't know anybody that's that upset about anything. Tim asked a funny one. As a guy who's just passed his test, how safe is it to drive in the Philippines? Well, the amount of people that don't have a license in the Philippines, you'll be fine. I think with the Philippines, it's just about aggressive driving. It's like fish. I see it as fish. You know the way shoals of fish just move around, and they could have a whale go through the middle of it, and they just adapt to it. That's driving in the Philippines. You just follow everybody else. When you're in a big 4x4, you can edge out. If you're on a little scooter or something, just keep out the way of everybody else. It's that simple. Manage that, you can pretty much drive there. It's not the safest place you're going to drive, but it's not the worst either. One of the contracts I was working on was related to the Middle East, was because the guy I was replacing had actually died in a car crash. And it's very, very common, extremely common out in the Middle East, because they drive excessively. Philippines, people are driving at a slow pace, so a lot of the bumps aren't too bad, especially in heavy traffic. Well, there you go. Hello, Winter. I drive here since 6 years, no license. That's pretty normal. It's the same with insurance. A lot of people don't have any insurance whatsoever. But I don't have any issue. I would say the provinces are a lot more dangerous. I remember coming back from a basketball match in Toledo and heading back to Minglanilla, and there was some construction work on the road. Now, we were doing, I think it was 90 kilometers an hour. And then there was just this little wooden sign with red paint on it. Like, basically, they took the road away. So I dropped down the height of the concrete, which was about a foot, straight onto hardcore, the big stones, at 90 kilometers an hour without any warning. Yeah, that sort of stuff happens in the Philippines. So yeah, I would say it's more dangerous in the provinces. Norwegian Polar Bear, what Duterte has said is that he wants to make the Philippines more friendly for foreign business and tourism. Will it come true on this task? Will he come true on this task? I would say it's a bit like the US with Trump at the moment. Everything's got to go through the Senate. So although a lot of the stuff you want to do, the reality is a lot of those people that control everything sit in the Senate in some way. The Philippines is exactly the same. You've got to get those votes. Now, I do think the Philippines could increase its tourism hugely by improving its infrastructure, improving the way it deals with tourism, tourists. And I do think infrastructure-wise, if they invested heavily, and it does seem to go in that way, that foreign business will come in, the bigger companies. The bigger companies will want some stuff changed to suit them, which I think will trickle down. Once the money starts pouring in, I think it's a bit like corruption. I think corruption reduces the more money there is there. That, you know, if you're making some money doing something corrupt, then, and suddenly you become the mayor of an area that's making a fortune because it's now got infrastructure and huge companies there, and you're just taking it from tax revenue. Which one would you want? No headaches and just picking up the money, or being corrupt and keeping it small? I think if things are allowed to develop, I do think the Philippines will change a lot and quite quickly once the infrastructure starts moving. Yeah, Alawita, true that they took away my plate in the provinces when I overspeed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta be careful, especially with the roadblocks. I mean, I've ran a couple of roadblocks, and not because I've tried to. I've just been going too fast. My own fault. But you've got to be very careful, because they do have people that will shoot people for running the roadblocks because they stop them, because a lot of the killings and robberies are done by motorcycles riders with pillion passengers. So that's why the roadblocks are something you need to be careful around when you've got a car, sorry, on a motorbike, because they're looking for the motorbikes. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is there enough being spent on the infrastructure, and is he handling the bribes? Assuming on about Duterte, I think the thing with that is Duterte is trying to use his position to get the other bits to function, because he can't intervene everywhere. You need to start developing an entire change in culture, and that's where he's been replacing people. So as he replaces people, I think the corruption reduces, because it's a bit like when you get comfy at a company job. Everybody in there is the same people you see week in, week out for the last 3-4 years. But if you start bringing in new people, suddenly it's not so comfortable anymore. And I think over time that will start to trickle down, because everybody starts doing their job because they're answerable to somebody they don't know. How's the new airport at Cebu going? I'll let you know when we land there next, because you know, we're due to go back this year, and there'll be an update on that as soon as we've got through this immigration process, which is very, very close now. Clark Airport in Angels is taking on more flights. Yeah, I heard that as well. I think they're opening the country up a bit more. I think the mindset's changed. My view on Powell will not change at the moment. Powell would have to do something amazing to actually change it. When I booked a flight with them and they left us locked out of their international lounge at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're sitting there going, oh, it's not just me, there's about 300 people there. You do sit there going, this isn't how you run an international business. But I think it'll take time. A lot of this is ingrained. It's the way people are, and it's historic. So I think it needs new blood, new ways of thinking. Trying to get some business leaders from other countries would help. Even if there are Filipinos that are going back to the Philippines to help the country develop, because they understand the country, they understand overseas, they understand what foreigners want. And I think that would help the Philippines considerably. Yeah, Deval Don says about talking about avoiding Manila Airport. I'm 100% with that. I do not go to Manila Airport if I can help it. I fly into Cebu. I come in via Hong Kong, Qatar. I used to fly to Cebu direct, but when there was some tariff changes, they don't do that anymore. So I normally fly Cathay Pacific straight, you know, London, Hong Kong, Cebu, because the short flights, Dragonair. Now, I've done Dragonair before with Qatar as well, but the problem with that is I needed to book the flight separately. which in Hong Kong, I had to go out, get my passport stamped to go into the Hong Kong luggage area, get my luggage, then go back through into the airport again. So I was in Hong Kong for 5 minutes. Yeah, you always pay airport tax upon leaving. Is the cash deposit that you have to pay when you leave? This is Norwegian Polar Bear. Leave the airport under the table money. Clark now have 600 peso tax. No, Cebu does it as well, and it's localized tax. But there's also, when you fly internationally out of Cebu, you often have to pay the international tax for leaving as well. And obviously, if you're a resident, there's more fees. It costs me a lot of money to leave the country. You know, when you arrive, there's no cost, but I can't remember how much I paid last time, because I ended up paying 2,200 for the tax at the airport. That's on top of that small fee, and then paying another tax for being a resident. So there's a lot of hidden charges that you're not aware of until you hit the airport sometimes, because they change without really updating any information online. So it's very hard to know exactly how much money you need at the airport, which is a bit frustrating, because it's nice if you just booked it online and forgot about it. But yeah, you do have to pay airport tax. There's no getting away from it. Even on internal flights, there's some tax you pay going through to the planes. So even going from Cebu to Manila, I think I paid 250 pesos maybe. Because sometimes we go up there for family gatherings, concerts, that sort of stuff. But yeah, you still have to pay even internally. So there's always some charges, there's always some tax somewhere. And I'll be honest with you, the UK, I fly from London instead of Birmingham because the price difference is £200 normally on the flight, because the tariffs at the Birmingham airport is an extra £200. There's a lot of prices hidden in your flight. So don't assume it's just the Philippines. It's quite simply in the Philippines, you get a little receipt. In your air courier that you normally do, they don't even put these figures in there. They've already put it in the ticket, the price. You haven't seen them. Yeah, the Val Dawn brought up the no bullet scams in 2016. I do think the bullet scam has been pretty much had its nail in the coffins now since Duterte's moved into office, because he made it one of his issues. And I'm sure there's been some staff overhaul there at the airport. And because let's face it, they'll know who's been doing it. It's not just happened. It's been an ongoing thing. So that because you got to imagine how much money does that cost the Philippines? You know, OFWs not wanting to go home, foreigners not wanting to go on holiday, foreigners not wanting to move there, you know, because some people do get scared. Because you've got to understand, if you were seeing this thing about the bullet in the bag, then you're going, oh, and then you start looking up other things. You're like, maybe I want to go to Panama or somewhere else instead. You know, it did a lot of negative media to the Philippines. And I will say, although Duterte gets a lot of backlash in the media, he is cleaning up a lot of the problems. And although a lot of it's not on the surface, I do think he doesn't get enough positive media. He gets a very large amount of negative media, but not enough actually saying what it's doing in a positive way. He's got Japanese investment. He's got investment from I think Norway's invested as well. He's got countries wanting to invest in the Philippines. He's bringing some form of security. What's been a bit quiet is the stuff relating to the other major issues in the Philippines. That seems to have quietened down, where there's been some conflicts ongoing in certain areas of the Philippines. So I'm not sure what's been going on there, because that's been a lot quieter than it used to be. Yeah, that's it. Deval Don. Media is biased. They're controlled by yellow media. I agree, and I'll be honest with you, I'm in a position where I sit between the two. We actually have friends that are connected with the Aquinos, etc. So I am sort of stuck between the two, but I'm not trying to create a dispute here. I'm just saying the realities of it. The media, and I think Duterte actually got more power because of the media as well, because people could see it was such a negative slant during the presidential election that Facebook and Twitter and all the social media actually become the campaign rallying points that actually won the presidential election. Tim Rogers, he's no saint. I agree, he's no saint, but I also think that his mindset is, we like it or hate it, is to actually improve the country. And I think that's where the difference is. Some of the previous presidents, it's been financial gain. Let's just leave it at that. It's not actually benefited the country, it's benefited certain individuals, they've extended families, etc., etc. I'm sure there'll be something that comes out later on into Duterte in a negative light, but I do not think he is anywhere near the level of corruption that others have done. I haven't heard anything relating corruption that involved Duterte. Let's put it that way. And if there was something there, I'm sure that's what they would have focused on in the media, but they haven't, because I don't think he's done it. I think it actually goes against his morals in some way. He's got a moral compass which, from a Western mindset, may seem a bit extreme, but at the same time, he's dealing with a difficult country that has embedded problems. Yeah, there's Norwegian Polar Bear said, I think Duterte is the right person to bring the Philippines forward. You have to crush some eggs to make an omelette. I agree. I think the UK's problem, for example, there is major problems in the UK and they're not even discussed. I've been to a meeting, which was a meeting relating to a very prominent building in Birmingham, where we had police chiefs, we had community leaders, we had different people from the communities and the policing and all these different important people trying to reduce the crime and problems within the area. And I was having a private chat with a police chief about how much, how many murders happen in Birmingham, how many serious crimes. His response was, go down to A&E on a Friday and you'll see it. And I said, well, why isn't it in the media? It says, well, we don't want to scare the people. And I just thought, so it's sort of like a fake front, because they'll cover things like the X Factor or something, but some of this serious stuff that happens on a weekly basis, nobody even talks about. Hello Winter says, Matt, will the Brexit have any impact on you and your family visa-wise? Let's put it this way. This year, I'm expecting to have the visa process finished for Spain. April, and the kids will become Spanish. I will be British, but then I become dependent on my wife's visa, even if there is a full-blown Brexit. So it will go the other way around later on at some point. My main concern with the Brexit is that the UK does not do something silly. At the moment, I don't think May is the right person to be taking the UK forward in such a serious thing. Now, it's not me being negative about her, it's me looking at her historically and saying, can you show me something you actually did that was actually completed? Net migration, failed. Security for the Olympics, failed. We need some strong leadership, and it needs to be backed with an entire team of people that understand the stuff they're talking about. And I do have my concerns that they're going to get knocked about with the EU if they don't pull their finger out and get a right team together that can actually turn this around in a positive way. It's okay making demands to the EU, but that ain't going to fix the problem. What we need is people to actually go, you know what? We're tired of paying too much into the system. What can we do to make this work? We want an exit. We want to move out. Moving out the free trade the common market, etc. I would say the common market thing's an interesting one because it needs to be evaluated on what we get in and what we put out. So if we're losing on it, how can we make that more favorable to the UK? Because a lot of the stuff the UK loses out on, but there's a lot of stuff it gains on. The problem is the media is biased, so you can't get a full picture on everything. But for myself and April and the kids, we'll be okay in Spain. The worst effect I have is the exchange rates. Yeah, Norwegian polar bear, many countries, mine included, are tired of being ruled by all kinds of stupid laws and regulations from Brussels. I agree. The UK has an entire industry that is orientated around health and safety. Now, don't get me wrong, health and safety is something we need. But do you need to have a health and safety manager who then sits and writes these documents that are not really needed? I'll give you an example of something that was a little bit strange for me. I was dealing with a bank. We were dealing with some quite major plant, the transformers, not of the robot kind, but there was an issue relating to a control on one of them. There was a issue by Siemens, you know, the guys that make these switching gear, and they were coming out on an insurance job to do it for free because it could cause potential to be dangerous. So the guy that's doing health and safety says, right, Siemens have sent me this report in on how they're going to carry out this procedure. It's a method statement, as it's called in the health and safety world. And this guy said, can you write a report, because we've got a high voltage engineer on site, can you write a report on how you will do it? And I'll write a report on how I would do it. Then we'll compare them and then compare it to the way Siemens have said they're going to do it. These are Siemens guys. These are the guys that work for Siemens directly. These are the guys that know this stuff inside out. Doesn't matter what these other two guys are going to come up with. They just needed to turn around and take a good look at it and say, does this seem right? But instead, they spent another day, two people off work doing stuff they should be doing to actually go through something that these specialists were being taught had to be second guessed on whether they knew what they're doing or not. Yeah, I agree. Too much comes out of Brussels, but I also believe a lot of it could have been prevented and still could be by good EU MPs. The UK's had some TV documentaries where we've had representatives just going to sign in at the EU and then going home and then booking the week as if they've been working. That is not representing anybody. And I think this is where things need to change. If you're going to represent us, at least turn up for work and stay there. Let's see, what other questions have we got? Switzerland is also not in the EU, and it's still the one place that shines above all. Ala Winter brings this up. Yes, but its economy is very different. I think because of the financial status of Switzerland, and there's some other stuff. I mean, I'd have to dig around on it, but there is reasons Switzerland's economy is in a better state. The UK's problem is it spends too much. It doesn't matter how you look at it. If you were spending the way the UK does, then the bank would cut up your credit cards. They may repossess your house, but that is the reality of it. Yeah, Switzerland is not an EU. No, it's not. It's not an EU member, but it has some deals that are still open. But the big problem with the UK is it needs a proper diagnosis of what we're actually losing and what we're actually gaining. And the media doesn't cover that. It never has done. It never goes through. We've got this. We give them that. It's always about the negative side of things. It's never about the positive impact. Now, the net migration is a problem, and that was focused on in the media. but it's not a problem on the way they focused. It's the way they focused on it is the problem. The problem you've got with the increased migration is housing, medical care, and just general costs that immigrants bring. But on the positive side, they will pay their way over time. The other big negative one, which has had an impact on myself as well, is when there was an influx of construction workers going into the UK, it reduced the labour market costs. I know back before the recession, I was paying a bricklayer £160 a day. I think that's probably about £100 a day now. And if I got some Eastern Europeans in that still legally British, I could probably get it down to 80. The reality is that's what pushed everything down in the UK. And this is the thing, a lot of this stuff we argue about, but the rich benefit from. You know, they bring down their cost of their construction. It benefits them. We lose out on the rates. We then have the same problem with the push on the cost of housing in the UK, because obviously the numbers of people come in are pushed the cost of housing up. But the wealthy have not been affected in a negative way whatsoever. Allo Winter says, the coolest stuff from Norway are the Helly Hansen jackets. Yeah, I would say that, but yeah, it's one of those places I want to visit. I've got one of my former call center guys is actually up in Norway at the moment. Funny enough, he was in Switzerland and he actually moved to Norway. I'm not sure if he's going back to Switzerland. He's got a work contract in Switzerland, but he was having some problems with his employer, so he's in Norway at his friend's house at the minute. I might try and get him online, not today, but I'll have a chat with him, see if he's interested. So let's see what else we can talk about. We're running out of topics fast. I'll do one more topic, and I think that'll be enough for today, because we covered a fair bit, and it's been good to see so many people online. I brought my wrong notebook, so I've only got the ones I've written down today. Oh, this is an interesting one. I'll have to check, because the guy he works for, Allo Winter, the guy he works for is a multi-millionaire. He's an au pair. He's become an au pair. The guy I know. I'll have to have a look, because it's in my chats. It's just I haven't really took much notice. I was just some of the drama he's been having recently has just caught my eye. Oh, he's male. He's a guy. Okay, back onto the Philippines. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't cover is, do they have a long-term plan for their partner? Myself, I've been talking to my wife about what she wants to do. Although she loves food, she don't really want a restaurant. So we're sort of like, okay, well, what do you want to do? One of her friends is heavily involved with Hollywood movies. She actually was doing the CGI for the film 300, her old college mate, or college or university, I can't remember. But the thing is, my wife wants to get into making movies and that sort of stuff. I'm not sure what she wants to do in it yet, but I was saying, well, we need to put a plan together on what you need, what we need to do to make this work. Because if she needs to go to college to study something, I'll support her. And if she wants to do something else, then that's fine. And I think that's the thing, because a lot of guys, I'm not sure where Chris has gone. A few of the guys asking where Chris is. Maybe we get Chris onto another chat. Maybe he's about. Let's see if I can. Let me just message Chris a second. Chris, live chat. Yeah. Yeah, so for me, it's important that my wife actually has a future for herself, because I know I ain't going to be here for forever. But also, I want to make sure my kids are secure. And although my wife wants to study something and work in the film industry somewhere, I think once her friend moves over from Los Angeles, it'll be a lot easier to do. Because right now we're in the middle of nowhere. We're sitting on the coast. Oh, I'll cover that Norwegian polar bear in a second. I'll just finish this one off. So for me, it's important that your partner has, well, my partner has a future. I've seen some of the things that go wrong with people in the Philippines after their partner dies, and how things deteriorate very, very quickly with family interference, with the fact that they couldn't maintain their big house that they had when they got married, etc. And I do think it's important to try and develop a future, because a lot of the time people only think of today. In Spain we call it the mañana mañana, but Hello Winter asks, are these live chats going to be regular? Yes, at the moment I'm only doing 20 hours a week with work. I've got other bits and pieces I'm doing in the background, but I'm going to do these regular. If people are interested in them, I'll do them regular. I don't mind. I find them quite interesting, and we can have a bit more engagement on it. Because obviously you're asking me questions as we go, and I'm responding to them as we go. Peter Roos asks, has the Philippines a lot of natural resources? Answer is yes, phenomenally. There's a lot of natural gas off the coast. There's a lot of gold, silver, copper. It's riddled with a lot of resources. And that doesn't even get into, if it actually sorted out, its coconut production and its fishing and everything else. There is no reason the Philippines can't leap forward. It's just one of those things that has been stagnated from corruption. And okay, it's had civil wars, it's had World War II, and not really had the infrastructure. But what stopped the infrastructure is corruption. So I'm hoping that will end. Okay, so Norwegian polar bear question. Would not the Philippines be the right place to start a pub business now, Matt? Maybe this is the right moment. We're trying to. This is why the English school stuff is something we're still trying to give it a kick up the backside. Peter Roos, no problem. But the reason being is we've got the facilities there. We already own the building. We own all the computer gear. The infrastructure is improving. The internet's getting better. So it is the right location to do it. One of the problems with the Philippines, though, if you've employed Filipinos, you'll know the issues relating to employment law. They can be a bit of a pain. So there is pros and negatives with it. Also, the formation of a company and how many Filipinos need to be on the board, etc., are a pain. But as I've done, I just set it up my wife's name. My wife owns it. My wife runs it. I just advise. And the other answer to that is I do think the Philippines is primed for a leap forward. And I do think there will be more business investment there. And if the corruption can get stemmed, it may be worth doing some businesses that are no longer functioning. I know myself that I look at businesses in the UK that have gone in decline, and I think, but there's still a viable business there. You know, the problem in the UK is the cost. Working for the corporation I was working for before, they are ending leases on a lot of buildings simply to reduce their costs in the UK. They're wanting people to work from home. The cost in the UK for labor, setting up a property, for carrying out functions, etc., is just too expensive. So there's a lot of opportunity that could be done in the Philippines and then exported. And I think that's what I'm saying about if things start to develop, the corruption should reduce, because people should see that actually having a viable business market pays way more than the corruption does. Tim Rogers, would I invest money in the Philippine Stock Exchange like people do in Lee? Myself, I don't invest in the stock market. I won't invest in things I don't understand. And it's not a case I couldn't understand it. It's quite simply, I don't understand their business model, etc. So it's hard to say. I know a friend, Robert Dayton, invests in the stock exchange, but myself, I don't understand it, and it has too many fluctuations for me. It would become a full-time job to do it, and I've got other things I could be doing. So for me, no. Norwegian Polar Bear brings up a good point. China's just signed a huge investment deal with the Philippines. Yes, exactly. This is the thing. What Duterte has done, because he's sort of pushed the US back a little bit, he hasn't severed ties. The media drums it up as if he's severing ties. What he's done is pushed it back a bit, and suddenly China and Russia want to be his friend. They want to invest there to try and create a bit of, look, we're with you type thing. And I think that actually benefit the country. So I do think that sitting slightly in the middle will benefit the Philippines. It's why other countries have visited, other people are investing, and it's just going to be a huge change. And I do think the Philippines will benefit ultimately. Because at the moment, so many things are failing there that they don't really discuss. But I do think getting this investment in there can improve the Philippines hugely if it can keep it out of the corrupt and in the hands of people that actually want to improve the country. Norwegian Polar Bear, the Philippine banks only guarantee, is that $10,000 of savings? It's 500,000 pesos, I agree, per account holder. So I think if you had two accounts with two separate banks, they would both be covered. It's per bank, because it's not the banks that cover it, it's the government. There was a scheme called the Legacy Scheme. If you Google this, it was one of those pyramid schemes where basically people were getting initially, if you invested your money now, you would get the return in 2 years. You get 100% return in 2 years. That was based on this abusing the banking system, because the banks couldn't actually cover the debts. It was done with the provincial banks. So eventually the banks went bankrupt and the government had to pay out the money. I think everybody got their money back. They were smart enough to separate the loans out, but it increased to 500,000 because it was lower before, if I remember right. But yeah, you got to be aware. If you see some of these schemes that go double your money in X, I'd be a bit wary of it, because the Legacy scandal went, and then there was another one relating to motorbikes that went after that. None of them I invested in myself, but I nearly invested in the Legacy one. But I was sat there, got the money, and I thought, I'm going to go back to work for the UK for a few months. I'll sit on it for a few months before I make a decision. When I'd come back, the whole thing had collapsed. So that was a good thing. South China Sea. What do you mean, Tim? What do you mean regarding the South China Sea? The rights with the Philippines and China, I think nobody really knows what's going on there at the minute, because most of it's covered by Western media. So we don't really get the facts on what's been declared, what's been decided, what people are discussing, what's been done previously under Kino. We don't really get the facts on it. If you invested correctly, what would you say the ratio of profit would be for every pound, dollar, etc., if any? This is a question from Tim. Depends what you're investing in. And the thing with stocks and shares, they go up and down. I use peer-to-peer lending a lot. I actually get 10.4% return per year before deductions. The South China Sea relating to the islands. Related to Tim's question, you may not even see this question. Who owns what is what Tim's asking. With the South China Sea disputes between the Philippines, China, Taiwan, and everybody else, because China wants to claim all of it. I think that we don't get enough information on it. That's what's on about with the South China Sea. But investment, always a risk. You always need to sit there and evaluate what happens if you lost all of it, but also what's the risk, what's the outcomes that could happen, will any of this actually affect you long term. Financially, I've found that my investments have always paid off. Like I said, with the legacy one, I wasn't happy with it, and I just sat on it for 3 months. So I wasn't 100% myself. Now, Tim Rogers mentioned Vietnam. Vietnam's an interesting one because I've actually got a student from there. There's some problems with Vietnam because China's got a lot of factories there and they're polluting the rivers and the seas. There's some problems there. Don't have all the facts, but I do know it's affecting the water off the coast. But I think if you're investing in business, my own view is you've got to understand it. I wouldn't invest in something I don't fully understand purely because the outcomes out of it you can't protect yourself from. I've found over the years that anything I've invested in, even if it starts to go slightly wrong, if I understand it, I can correct it, improve it, put it back on the right track, which is why I don't really lose any money anywhere. I've always made money. It's like with the call center, I did the servers because it's the most critical part of the business. Because if they stop, everyone's just sat there and they're costing money. If I'd put an IT guy in there, there's a good chance he'll set it up and just run it because it's running. He's not running it because it's running the best it could be. He's just leaving it ticking over, which doesn't make you money. Now, anybody else got any other questions? Because otherwise we'll call it a day for this one because it's been quite a long one. Yeah, Norwegian polar bears. The South China Sea is a hot topic. Trump's foreign minister just told Congress in the hearing that the US has to deny China access to the islands. That's what I'm saying. We don't get full information on the South China Sea because it's all led by media, not facts. A lot of the debates are going on behind closed doors in embassies, etc. Because it's as clear as mud. It's a bit like that unmanned, what they call it, Rove, isn't it? The underwater robot thing. The US lost, the China, well, I say lost in the sense that China took it. That is becoming a hotbed because obviously it's in international waters. It's becoming an issue. Now, Tim, would you invest in shops and property? I would invest in owning shops and I would invest in property, but here in La Mata, it's, for me, we're going to buy the home first and then we'll see where we go. I've got a property in mind here. It's at the right price. I just need my contract signing off, and as soon as that's signed off, that'll give me the green light to do it. Don't really want to discuss it at the moment. The reason being is when I buy it, you'll see why. Like stopping, like Tim Rogers, like stopping water from a sieve. I'm not sure what you're on about there, but you might be on about where the Philippines will have those little foam things. I've never seen them anywhere else in the world, but it basically fits over your tap and collects the stones and other stuff that comes out your water tap. But I've never seen them elsewhere. Only in the Philippines. Yeah, I've actually wanted one of those underwater things for here in Spain. I was actually looking at plans of buying one of those. You know, the underwater drone robot type thing. They look good fun, but they're just expensive. And one of the things I do love is electronics. I'm an electronic addict. I love technology. it's just something I could spend all day doing. But that's why I try to avoid doing too much with it. It's why, behind me there's a litter of cameras and all sorts, because I do buy stuff because I've seen it and thought, oh, I'm going to have that and look at it. And I know I shouldn't do it. That's the crazy thing. I know I shouldn't do it, but I still do. Okay, so that's today's match chat, and we've got another one tomorrow with Rona from Rona's cooking channel. So if you want to be online for that, it's going to be, I think it's early in the morning. I think it's 8 o'clock tomorrow Spanish time. The reason being it's in the PM in Singapore, so that's an early one for me. But thanks for everybody being here. It's been nice having you all. All right, take care.